Alright, so this game was overall pretty good, I think. I know I say this every time we play a Yakuza game. I really cannot believe that we've played 5 of these games now. I really can't. I will say when we first started doing this, I honestly was not sure if we would be able to play all 8 of them. Now that the last 3 are in sight, we're definitely going to be able to do it, without a doubt. It could take us, you know, another 6+ months to 9 months to do the next 3, I'm guessing. But we'll get there for sure. Crazy enough, it is going to happen. So, alright, let's go. So, let's talk about characters and what was good here with this game. So, this was technically the first Yakuza that did multiple protagonists. Even though if you want to talk chronologically, in terms of the game's timeline, that's 0, right? But this game was, of course, made before 0. In fact, this game was actually made in 2010, which is only 1 year after Yakuza 3, believe it or not. Yakuza 3 was in 2009. And not only was it just 1 year, it was only really 12 or 13 months. So it wasn't like a year and some change, really. It was almost 1 whole year in between, which is really freaking crazy when you think about it, right? The difference in technology between these 2 games, both how they look and the writing and like everything, really. I mean, between 3 and 4 is a quantum leap. It's absolutely kind of insane to me. 4 is just a massively better game, every freaking capacity. That could be the case. I did not actually check which studio was between 3 and 4. We could look that up later. But yeah, 4 is it came out only 1 year later. And in a lot of ways, 4 is actually, it's kind of shocking that 4 even uses the same, or that 4 is on the PS3, because it looks so much better and just plays so much better too. Crazy, crazy, crazy. But yeah, anyway, a lot of good characters in this game. This game was honestly way more fun than I think the past couple of Yakuza games we've played. So Akiyama and Tanamura were both good additions to this game, I think. Akiyama especially was really good. His entire kind of noir-esque story and seeing how everything for him plays out, with his own sense of ethics and the way that he kind of follows through on things was really, really nice. Everything about it was really, really enthralling with Akiyama especially. Tanamura's was also pretty good too. Even though there's some stuff I could say that I didn't like about Tanamura's, I would still say his was pretty good. Yeah. And a lot of the other side characters were good. Yeah, Hana was a lot of fun. I thought the whole dynamic between Akiyama and Hana was actually really, really fun. Even if there's some weird gender stereotype stuff, I'll give it a pass because the game is from 2010. I mean, come on. And it's Japan too, so you got to be able to kind of put it in context, right? They do a really good job with Yasuko too. The way that they try to frame her throughout the game, both inside of Akiyama's storyline, as well as how she's developed throughout everybody else's, is actually really good. Her development was actually very solid. And it actually made sense. There's a lot of character development in Yakuza I feel just sometimes makes 0 sense. Hers actually kind of makes, well, I would say mostly makes sense, yeah. The only thing about Yasuko I actually found really weird and didn't make a whole lot of sense is, I understand her obsession with her brother. They took it one step a little bit too far with how she's obsessed with Taiga. But it's fine. It's fine. I know they were writing it that way. I can live with it. It's not by any means a huge mistake in this game compared to some other things. So, it's I'll give him a pass. I'll put it that way. Bungle, how's it going, man? All right, the bad. Arai is too all over the place. This is so freaking true, man. Arai just makes so little sense after a certain point. He's kind of a mysterious figure at the beginning of this game, and then he kind of very quickly just becomes this plot device to just kill literally everybody who stands in the way, just to for the sake of making him seem like he's the big bad, right? Um, and it's I don't know. I just feel like he really could have been handled like way better. But you know, that's honestly kind of a problem in general with a lot of villains in these games, is that a lot of them kind of feel like that they are a little forced, right? Um, if we compare Arai to like some of the villains from 3, you know, ignoring like Black Monday, but like there was like the other guy from 3, his name, Mine, I think. Yeah, I think Arai makes a little bit more sense than Mine's motivations. So like everything with Mine from the last game made like very little sense to me. It was completely ridiculous. But I will say at least Arai makes more sense than that. Like he was, without a doubt, just someone who would just like pop in sometimes and just kill and just go away, and you'd be like, oh my gosh, I can't believe Arai did that. And that was like literally like the entire point of the scene Arai was in. That happens so many times, right? Like when he shoots Munakata in the face, and you're like, oh my gosh, I thought Arai was working with Munakata. And then, you know, it's just, I don't know, it was just completely silly. Arai's hot though. I mean, look at that stare, man. That steely eyes gaze, you know, really pierces my soul. Alright, so Munakata is essentially zero motivation beyond power. True. Why does Munakata really do anything in this game? Munakata really is, his grand plan is to just like rule over both like the Yakuza world and the police world, to have like some like harmony between the two. You know, have some like weird equilibrium, I think was like the way he basically phrased it. Where it's like, oh, you know, neither side should be like more powerful than the other, so we have to make sure there's like constant balance or something. I don't know. It was it really doesn't make any sense, like, at all. Munakata is like debatably a worse villain than Arai is. Yeah, you know, I would actually say he's probably most definitely a worse villain than Arai is, but whatever, it's fine. Saejima is hard to empathize with. I think this is quite true. Taiga Saejima is, you know, they tried to, once you get to his campaign in the game, they try to make it sound like, you know, or try to put him in this light that he's like not such a bad dude or whatever. And that, you know, all the dudes that he shot, oh, you know, he had rubber bullets when he shot all of them. You know, he just happened to have all these rubber bullets, and he didn't kill any of these, like, what was it, like 20 men or whatever, or 19 men or something like that. But, you know, the thing is that the intent was still there, right? I mean, like, he really wanted to kill those guys. So it's like, it's really difficult to sit here and be like, oh man, you know, I really feel bad for Saejima, when really I don't, because he's still kind of a bad dude. Like, it's really difficult to look at him and like feel that bad for what he's been through and how long he's been locked up and all that stuff, and, you know, being a fugitive and all that. Except for the part where really, you know, Yasuko is like the one who really like bears the blunt of that damage. Like, you feel kind of bad about that, right? But you don't feel bad about Saejima himself directly. So, I would definitely say the 4 protagonists, his is like the weakest story, at least in my opinion. I'm interested to see what he's going to be like in Yakuza 5, though, because I know he's one of the returning characters. Of course, along with Akiyama. Tanamura, they, of course, had to get rid of, I think, because they couldn't use his likeness anymore. One of those, you know, weird agency conflicts that Yakuza has a tendency to get itself caught up on. So, alright, so the good on here for the story, I really actually think the 4 protagonist presentation paid off. Like, I was really not sure before we started playing this as to whether or not it would actually work out. And actually, I think they did a pretty good job. Like, they actually were able to make it really cohesive with all 4 stories. And you could actually kind of see how things flow together, even though I would say it sometimes gets confusing in, I think, particularly Tanamura's, because in Tanamura's they do some time skipping. where certain parts of Tanomura's take place, you know, earlier in Akiyama's timeline, and some of it takes place, you know, after Akiyama's timeline, and then like way after, right? So Tanomura's is like probably the most confusing one, but they actually, it's not like so out there with his that you like lose track of everything. You just have to like think about it a little bit. But overall, I think they actually did a pretty good job with it. Like the 4 protagonist route actually really worked, so good on them. I really had no idea how it was going to be. So yeah, I mean, the story was overall pretty good for this one. It's probably, you know, it's still not, it's no Yakuza 0, but it's way more engaging than 3's, way more sensible than 3's for sure. Definitely better than 2's and 1's as well. And so like I kind of said before, Yasuko is like pretty great. She kind of pulls it all together, and works to basically be like a single thing that kind of like runs through all the different protagonist stories. So. Oh yeah, and Sugiyuchi's arc is pretty good. If you recall, Sugiyuchi was the one guy who Tanomura actually spends most of his campaign chasing, because he was the one who killed his dad or whatever. So he goes and basically goes through that whole kind of sequence, kind of chasing Sugiyuchi, and then like they do like the whole like boat chase. So they do that whole boat chase, and then he corners them, and they fight on the like far off like island or whatever, and then like a different policeman just like kills him. But like that whole thing was actually pretty good. Like Sugiyuchi's arc was actually pretty good. I was actually quite surprised. Sugiyuchi's actually probably like the strongest villain in this game, and they actually do pretty good, making you sympathize with him and his death and stuff, and how he like really wished he could be like a real cop and not just like some Yakuza pretending to be a cop or whatever. So I actually thought that was pretty good with Sugiyuchi. Alright, the bad. Okay. This one's pretty simple to me, so let's just focus on rubber bullets, okay? Rubber bullets is the ultimate plot device in this game. And I would actually say that this game, when you really kind of like look at people's opinion of it, rubber bullets is the #1 thing that people focus on in this game the most, right? Now, to refresh everyone's memories, there's 2 instances of rubber bullets in this game that are both pretty pivotal, right? And really, really change the outcome of things. The rubber bullets are used first when looking back at for Saejima when he commits like the hit on the Ueno Seiwa clan in 1985. All of the bullets in his guns are rubber bullets. All of them, somehow, are rubber bullets. So he thinks he's killing like 19 people, and it turns out he's not. And that, what's his face? I don't remember if it was, no, it was not Munakata himself, it was somebody else. Comes in and kills them all, right? I guess it's actually the other guy whose name I can't remember. But anyway, the point is that, you know, they set that up so that Saejima doesn't kill any of them. And then the other time the rubber bullets is used is when Arai shoots Munakata straight point blank in the head. And then you're like, oh man, Munakata's done for. And then you find out it's a rubber bullet. Which to me is like, the thing that's actually most insane about that is that I'm pretty sure that even if it was a rubber bullet, he would probably be dead just from the shock alone. Just from the shock alone. From being shot at such close range. Really, really crazy. How would one think to kill people when using rubber bullets? Well, the thing is that all of the rubber bullets that are in this game are meant to be like, you know, like people don't expect that they're there, right? But the other thing is that they look too much like real bullets in like every instance that you see them here that it doesn't really make any sense. I would feel like real rubber bullets that were meant to be like that small would probably look different from like actual bullets, but you know, I don't know. It's really weird. Really, really weird. They don't tend to penetrate the skin either. Yeah, for sure. Which is especially why for when Arai shoots Munakata in the head, that it really doesn't make any sense, because he shoots him and he's like right there. He's the only one there with Munakata when he shoots him in the head, and then he walks away. And it's like, yo, you shot him. You should be able to tell if your bullet like went into his head or like where the blood splatter was, right? Like if you shoot somebody like, just pow, like right there, he would know. Wouldn't it be a huge like giveaway if there's like no like red mist? Like, I don't know. I mean, it's like, it seems like it makes sense to me that he should just like know, especially because like it's not like Arai, the first time Arai is killing anybody. Like up to that stage in the game, he's killed like several people. So like I think he would like know very well as to whether or not Munakata is actually dead when he shoots him in the head, right? Like the one for the hit on the Ueno Sewa, I can like forgive like only a little bit, just because, when his adrenaline, when Taiga's adrenaline is like flowing through him, right? He's probably like not even thinking about it, right? He's probably just moving on from one enemy to the next. So there's that, but like for Munakata, it definitely makes no sense because he just shoots him in the head, and then Munakata like, his head falls backwards like that, right? So he should be able to pretty easily see whether or not he's dead or not, but I don't know. Whatever. So, yeah, I mean, that being the ultimate plot device is kind of stupid. I would not say it drags the entire story down, though. I think it definitely makes certain parts of it less believable, which is basically what I'm implying here. It makes it more difficult to suspend your disbelief as like the player in some of those parts when you're going through the sections of the story, but it's not like it like ruins the whole game. Like, this is Yakuza we're talking about, right? Like everything's gonna be a little bit ridiculous. So at some point you're just kind of like, well, yeah, I guess it's just Yakuza being Yakuza. So that's that. So like the other bits, everything does kind of fall apart a little bit towards the final act. When everybody is like kind of like clamoring to get on the roof for the final fight, because this is Yakuza, all final fights are on rooftops, right? So when you're like getting to the roof for the final fight, and then you kind of do this three-way battle with Munakata, Arai, and Kido. Kido and Daigo, right? Daigo's there too. The fight between like especially Daigo and Kiryu really doesn't make a whole lot of sense. It just really doesn't. That whole fight is just like really just kind of meant to be like a manly like gar fight, right? Like just use the most gar of either of them basically. And it was a little over the top. Like it really didn't need to be that way. But I don't know. They just decided they had to, so whatever. I guess it's Yakuza, right? So the whole sequence around Yasuko's death, this was pretty stupid, I gotta say. So when, gosh, I really wish I could remember his name right now. The other big enemy guy, when they're on the roof, right? The other roof, with Yasuko, Taiga, Kido, and I wish I could remember his name, when they're all there, and then so like Taiga's like, ugh, you're not worth finishing off, and then like he just like walks away from it for some reason when he's like laying there in the ground, and then of course he gets up and shoots Yasuko, and it's like, come on, man. Like it was just like a super stupid sequence. Like there's like no reason why Yasuko has to die in that, when all Taiga had to do was just like make sure that he was dead, or just like make sure that like, he couldn't like do anything. He could have at least incapacitated him, right? It's kind of stupid. It really is. It's kind of like they really kind of forced that scene to really just make sure that Yasuko died in that scene, and for whatever reason they couldn't come up with a better way to write it. But well, that's Yakuza, I guess. Again, it's not something that brings the whole game down. It doesn't bring the whole story down, because most of these things all happened like very late in the game, right? especially like the final act, of course, and then Yasuko's death is really part of the final act. So all that stuff happens very, very late. It's not really that big of a deal, but it does kind of like bring down the ending a little bit more than it really should have. All right, so our minigame picks this time were, not the best still. I would actually say that when comparing minigames in this one versus the other entries, this one is only like one step above like Yakuza 3, really. So like Yakuza 3 starts, I think it was the first game with a hostess simulator. And then Yakuza 4 basically takes that hostess simulator and makes it better. But of course, not nearly as good as what you have in, say, Kiwami 2 and 0, right? The hostess simulators of both of those are like, it's really, really good. Like all the Cabaret Club stuff was just honestly a lot of fun. It's kind of like silly and stupid as it is, it was still like just kind of fun to play, right? Wasn't super difficult, but it was just kind of fun to play through. Had just enough of a hook to keep it going. The Sega arcade stuff is still pretty disappointing in this one because, in Yakuza 3 we had Boxelios, and then in Yakuza 4 we have Boxelios 2. Terrific. Excellent. just what I wanted, more Boxelios. Which I guess it must have been pretty popular for fans at the time, but I don't know. Beyond like how it looks graphically, because it just looks like a tech demo. Beyond that, it's really not that engaging to actually play that minigame. Now, I will say that the karaoke showing is much better in this one than Yakuza 3. And that is partially helped by the fact that you do have 4 protagonists. So, some of them could sing songs in their own way. Like I remember Akiyama has, I think, 1 like that, and I think Tanamura has 2. And I think Kiryu has 3. So, decent showing in karaoke this round. You can tell that they, like, in this game, for karaoke, they were, like, really starting to get their stride on it. It's first introduced in Yakuza 3, and then here they really kind of develop on it better, so. And then everything else that you're used to in other Yakuza games, bowling, golf, the batting center, etc., all that stuff is here. But there's, like, not a whole lot that really stands out, right? One thing I actually did not list is that besides there being a hostess sim, there is that fighter sim that we didn't really end up playing a whole lot of. That's like the one thing that I do wish we spent a little bit more time with in this game was doing that fighter sim. But it was also pretty forgettable. like we just like didn't remember it really that much while we were playing because it's kind of like off the beaten path a little bit, and you have to play, I think, with a specific character. I want to say it was Taiga. I think you had to play as Taiga to do it. So, that was actually kind of like one of the disadvantages to the minigames in this one, is that there were certain things like that where only certain characters could do some minigames. So, yeah, I mean, that's like a small dig against it, but overall, it's like definitely not the worst minigame showing. I mean, it's, probably not as good as 0 or even 1's minigames. It's better than 3's. Like, 3 has like the worst minigame selection. So, not great, not terrible. That's what it boils down to. Alright, so combat in this one is basically like a slightly better version of 3's. Which makes sense, right? I mean, it's a sequel. The level up system in this one is better than 3's for sure, because 3's level up system was pretty terrible. It was just absolute garbage. I would actually say that the level up system in 3 is literally my least favorite out of any of the 5 that we've played so far. There's a lot of things in 3 I just don't like in general, and that's definitely one of them, is the way that you pick skills and stuff in 3. It, like, really, really constrains you. Really kind of boxes you in, so. And this one is actually somewhat reminiscent of what we'll end up seeing in like 6, almost like a really like proto version of that, kind of like a stripped down, downscaled version of that. So, and by 6, I also mean Kiwami 2, right? Because they use exactly the same engine. So, and Kiwami 2 definitely does have the best classic Yakuza, you know, fighting system and leveling system out of any of them so far. So yeah, I mean, there's like more freedom of options of like what you can actually pick to spend your like level up points or whatever on, which, you know, 3 does not have, right? 3 basically gives you 3 categories, and then in those 3 categories, you can only spend, or you can only choose from 2 options, and then the other option gets permanently discarded, which is stupid. It's like you have to choose between an HP upgrade and a skill, and you can't get both for some reason. Like, I don't know. 3's was really, really, really bad in that way. I don't know why. But yes, more characters meant more fighting styles, which is great, because I actually had a ton of fun playing, doing combat in this game with Tanemura and Akiyama. They've actually, especially Tanemura, is probably the deepest fighter out of all 4 of them, because Tanemura has this whole extra mechanic for counters, which none of them, nobody else has. And from what I remember, there's not a whole lot of much of a counter system in any of the prior games. And even in 0, I don't think either of Kiryu's or Majiba's stances have a counter stance, at least from what I remember. So, but yeah, Tanemura's is a lot of fun. Akiyama's is a lot of fun. Once again, like most things with Saejima, I did not like actually doing fights with Saejima because he's the kind that's a slow, heavy hitter, which has never really been my preference in like basically any game. I'm not the kind of playing as slow, heavy hitters. So yeah, I mean, overall not too bad for combat. Was pretty okay. Better than 3's. I would even go as far as to say better than 1's. Definitely not as good as 2's combat, and 0's combat is probably still better too, I would say, just because of all the choices you have. And so the only fight in this one that was a struggle, you know, of course we did play this on easy, and we're going to continue to do so. The only fight in this that was a struggle was the final fight, because it reminded me a lot of Yakuza 1's final fight with the cheap shit of being on top of the building surrounded by, you know, the big bad's guards, right? Big bad's guards beating you up. So it's, you know, Munakata's personal police force beating the shit out of you, basically. It was a lot like that fight. It reminded me of so much of it, and it was so annoying. But otherwise, though, not too bad. All right, so wrapping this one up. So, in conclusion, protagonist ambition pays off. So yeah, the 4 protagonist thing works great. Worked way better than I expected it to for a game that's 11 years old. That much is for certain. Never would have expected that. Basically, all the new, you know, recurring characters are good or solid enough, right? Like even Saejima is solid enough. Like, I may not like necessarily like his character now, but I may end up liking him more in 5, and he's not really like a awful character. I just like have a hard time sympathizing with him or empathizing with him in really any real way, or having like any real just relating to him really at all, honestly. So the story was still pretty solid, despite the fact that the last arc is pretty meh. You know, Yakuza is definitely one of those games where sometimes the ending can kind of fall apart, depending on how many ass pulls they do. And they still did some here, but it was still pretty good. So I'm not going to give it too much of a slide on that. The game is overall a huge leap over Yakuza 3 in basically every capacity, and this much is definitely true. And like I said at the beginning of the stream, or beginning of looking through this review, there's only 1 year between 3 and 4. So it's really crazy to just see how different those two games are, honestly. Like 3 and 4 are very, very different games, I would say. 4 is just like miles ahead of 3 in every capacity. So yeah, overall, pretty solid 7 out of 10. And I would say, you know, pretty good Yakuza entry overall for sure. Especially considering how it ranks among these 5 games. Speaking of, that ranking is now, of course, with 0 being the best, and then 4, 2, 1, 3 as. I'm pretty sure nobody is surprised by this because we've talked about this before. How 4 ranks pretty good overall among all of these. So, and honestly, looking at the list here, it really like it's just kind of funny to physically see like Yakuza 4 being like this far above 3 even in our own ranking of the games, honestly. But it's true though. I mean, 3 is like kind of like a poopy mess, and then 4 is just like a much better put together game. Like there's just no other way to put it. So yeah, I mean 0, 4, 2, 1, 3. That's what it boils down to. So I'm pretty curious to see how 5 is and how it's going to affect this ranking and what we're going to end up thinking of it. 6 I've heard is just like pretty good overall. So I have no doubt the 6 is going to heavily shake this up. So yeah, 5 I really honestly don't know a whole lot about, but everyone says 6 is pretty good. So we'll see what that's like once we get there. All right, chat. That's it for our review of this game. Sounds like y'all probably pretty much agree with this because I know we talked about the overall stack ranking of this before. So